Hey, it's Bear Gardener, and this is another Cards content video. I am a member of the Cards Content Creators Program. You can find me at all the social media and stuff down below. Like, follow, all of that gubbins. So I don't make a big deal of it, but it's incredible the amount of support I'm getting, which is great. This video is being recorded on Sunday morning, just after I kind of woke up, got my coffee, because I was talking last night about the deck that I was playing on stream. And people were really interested in it. I was having some fun with it. Got into talking about the origins and the logic and the way that it works, and it became an interesting thing. And I said, hey, I'll do a video on it. So here I am. I'm going to take like half an hour or so to do a video on it. This one's going to be possibly a bit rougher than my usual videos. Disclaimers as we start this video. Originating and attributing decks is hard in this game. They filter down, people make changes a lot of the time, it's hard to know where they came from. In this particular case, I am extremely certain, 98% or better certain, that the actual origin point of this place is No in 5, who is a player you will see on ladder, at the top of ladder, with a ludicrous score currently. Known as an excellent deck builder and an excellent competitive player. This deck was shown to me by someone, and I looked at it and went, possibly work. I actually, when I first saw it, I thought someone was attempting to pull a fast one on me. I really did. But then I played it. Man, I played it. And my mind started digging into what was happening and the maths and the understanding, and I played it, and then I started climbing and climbing, and I don't have the time, as I have talked about many times, to actively climb, but I still gained a huge chunk of ELO on this. It's a very good deck once you learn to run it. Anyway, this is by the by, mostly saying this is No in 5's deck, as far as I am aware. And as far as I am aware, I'm using it unchanged. It is very interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the deck, talk about it a bit, and then we're going to talk about, I'll give some commentary on me playing the deck reasonably well, and the bonkersness of this deck. So, let's actually take a look at the deck before we do anything else. There we are. So this deck, don't mind the silly titles, it's what I do with my decks. This deck is a Germany-Japan aggro deck. It's the best way to categorize it. It's kind of its own thing, but you look at the curve, bonkers. But there's no high end to this deck. However, this deck has some really interesting includes. 4 combined arms. We don't see this very often. Seeing a bit more of it at the minute. It's not heavily run. It usually appears via 20 Panzer Grenadier, which is down here. Like, really at the top end of this deck's cost curve, which speaks volumes. We are loaded on 1-drops. Really notably include that can steer you in the wrong direction with this deck is the 34th Infantry. So this is the 2/2 infantry that discards a card at the end of your turn. You draw and discard the top card of your deck at the end of every turn. Its only saving grace is that it's a 1-drop 2/2 with 0 op cost, but it's generally used in self-discard as an engine. Not here, as we don't have any of the other discard parts. I'll explain in a minute. Classic aggro deck, we have the 94 early, notably a 15th Cavalry, no little baby Panzer tanks, none of that. What we do have, Panzer 35T, of course, Heinkel, because filtering is always helpful, draw engine in 22, Panzer 38Ts, more draw, since the theme of this unit-based draw. We have the MEBF 109. This will be relevant. We have the autocannon, 20 Panzer Grenadier, the Storer, Dragon Slayer, 3H, and Jagd Bomber. Jagd Bomber is the capstone cost-wise in this deck. Now, you might have noticed a slight through line. This deck heavily values, 15th Cav over here, doing the same thing. This deck heavily values 0 op cost for a reason. So I could talk about how this deck works now, or we can see the deck played, then I can talk about how this deck works, and personally I think that's substantially more fun. So that's what we're going to go do. Here we go. So this is just some gameplay of me playing the deck. I think it's like 3 games that I've got here, and I'll talk you through what's going on as best I can, because this deck is in the needs to be seen to be believed category. As usual, we're looking at the opponent's HQ, US, although interestingly this deck is not too fussed, mulligan-wise. So what we're looking for here is 0 op cost. We got a lot of it. So the function of this deck is to go fast. Really fast. And it does, as we are going to attempt to demonstrate. Our opponent is taking much longer over a mulligan, which is totally understandable. First play here is not an action. First play here is to get something into the front line. Now, you make an argument for Nakshu, but we really aggressively want the front line in this deck, and I am playing against US. So I don't want to give them the chance to get any purchase. Because the one thing this deck can do is stall if it doesn't get purchase. It's a for real thing that it can stall. So then we draw into as a storer. So down comes the Naktube. I'm playing this very quickly because I've had some practice on this deck. So down comes the Naktube, forward goes the 0 op cost. And immediately we've got 3 damage to face and we're presenting another 4. And we have 3 units out. Turn 2. So now it's a race. This is a really good frontline play. It's really strong. 1 credit short of the ideal. The ideal frontline play is to get that 2-2 into the front line. Now, we're very lucky here. We top deck through the breach. There is only 1 of these in the deck, and it is for moments like this that it is powerful. I don't want to lose my positional advantage. Again, and so we have played the 34th Infantry. At this point, we are going to be throwing away cards. We don't care. I will explain properly later, but this deck is largely premised on the idea that you're not going to use the majority of cards in your deck anyway, so it doesn't matter if you're discarding them. Dive bombing's interesting here, but we'll remove yet another threat if we play it, but we don't need to. What we actually need to do is strengthen our presence. We've got the 2-2, which is now a trade that they're going to have to find something else to trade into. This is the value of the 34th Infantry. It is an incredibly awkward unit to deal with because it is 1 cost, 0 op cost 2-2. No, it doesn't have blitz. That would be silly. But it's very strong, and I hadn't realised how strong it can be as an aggro tool until I played this deck. And it may only work in this deck. So half track. Now, I think our opponent makes a mistake here. I honestly think our opponent, who I have a huge amount of respect for and have had some incredible games with, would have been better pushing the 34 back to try and get some purchase in the front line. But that's okay. It just depends what we draw. So we're incredibly lucky. 35T, it's straight out because that's what this deck does, and we're straight back into the front line. Going to remove the half track because that actually can trade. So we're going to get rid of its option to trade. Then we're deciding what we want to attack with. Doesn't matter ultimately, so we're on there, and now suddenly we are completely empty-handed. Crazy, right? And now we're throwing cards away. I've learned not to be worried about this on this deck. So we can do it as a huge just play here to try and stall for time, because our opponent is seeing what we're trying to do. Combined Arms comes up. Combined Arms is so powerful in this deck. So now 7 and then 11 damage to face. So now it's lethal. Just like that. Thunderously fast. Our opponent needs to find a way out. And quick. At minimum, must destroy the 34th and remove the Panzer. 34th's gone. Here we go. We can trade out the Panzer. This look at the resource cost for our opponent here, though. Card after card after card being flung into the Panzer. Gonna have to sack another one. Clears the Panzer. That never feels good. That's so much value. Panzer Grenadier is amazing here. Because Combined Arms is strong. Now, we think for a minute here, how do we want to do this? Our opponent is not actually presenting any actual threat to us. They only have infantry in the back line. We could try and clear up and tidy things up, or there are other things that we can do. I am taking a moment to actually really think about this. Eventually, I played the T. Remove one of the threats. Buff the T. And start chipping away. Because I can clear and get in the front line. So it took me a moment to find that line. This is where I talk about the pilot skill ceiling on this deck. I had to find that line. Needed to use my time to do it, despite the fact that this deck gains position quickly and can win fast. It is not an easy to play deck. You need to have your head about you to play it well. You have to be on instinct. Big swing, trades out the Rangers, has to, doesn't have a choice, didn't have the extra credit to drop it as an 8-8 because this deck is too fast to allow room for that. Devil's Brigade can do a point of ping to something. I probably would have pinged the aircraft, but in the end I don't think it's going to matter, and in fact it doesn't. So front line, base, 94. Push the knack tube. Now, why push the knack tube? Because the only way that our opponent stops us from winning here is clearing us out, getting us off the front line. So I want to give myself as many outs as possible, so I'm not having to top deck for a win. I don't mind if I have to top deck for a win, but I'd rather not have to. Cards are out there that can do damaging things to us, and our opponent is currently looking for one. I will say my opponent played this game very well. Again, I have an enormous amount of respect for Radiation. Every time we play a game, we play incredibly well, and I always feel like I have to concentrate, and I like that part of it. We can do it. It's just a survival tool right now, because if you clear out this, you have a 1 HQ left. You've got no choice. You have to do it. Straightforward. We're just doing nothing. Just ramp the pressure. Just push. Opponent's doing a magnificent job of stalling us out here. Like, unbelievably good. Dropping the 99th like that never feels good, though. It doesn't matter that I'm putting this on a 0-4. I'm not putting it on there, it's just a threat. I'm just saying you've got yet another card to clear from my support line or you're done. Hellcat. Kaboom! Another incredibly strong play from our opponent. This is probably this is one of the most pushed games I have faced on this deck, which is one of the reasons I like showing it. So we're back to discard heaven. Opponent pushes up, drops California. Everything's on finding a way. Now, This is starting to look really bad for us, except we top deck lethal. And this is a straight top deck win. This game I kept because it does illustrate the way that the deck works. It also illustrates that you do have to think, and sometimes you do have to get lucky. So we got the win. Next game. So once again, we're going to be looking to see what we're coming across. We have some idea what we're doing. Starting to get a feel for how this deck plays. So we've got Japan. This could be interesting because we could be going aggro to aggro. That would usually be a bad sign. Nakshub's an amazing start. Nakshub, 2 pans, 35 Ts, and 2 of these. Now we're starting to think, are we facing the mirror? Which would be fascinating. So, here we go. Nakshub goes down. Opponent, of course, pushes. No reason not to. Experimental flight, so it's not, it's discard. So now we know what we're playing against. Our opponent's going to try and fuel a discard engine to get things out and effects from their deck. We, at this point, are less concerned because this is a face race. And that's what we do on this deck. So, not ideal, but gives us the chance to use the 2 credits we gain to get some position, and now our opponent has to trade out. We know we've got 2 Panzer Grenadier in our hand. We've had unbelievably good draw here. Signals coming down as a pain in the backside. Gonna make this hard because that makes our job a lot more difficult, but we aren't usually that bothered about damaging and destroying enemy units, barring to fuel Nakshub. Very interesting hand at this point because we have nothing. We are completely out. So as our opponent starts taking advantage, we have to start thinking about ways out. 94 early is a good drop here, but is it the drop? That becomes a different question. So I'm in thinking mode again. Again, the skill ceiling on this deck. In the end, it's like, yeah, I might as well take the front line. I'm going to absolutely stack this 94. It's now a 7-7, which becomes an 8-7, and there's 3 damage on board. Oh, nothing. Sendai makes it disappear. Big play, except of course we're holding Panzer Grenadiers. Twice, in fact. And a Panzer. Panzer's great. Panzer gives us options too, so now we, once again, think, find the line. I'm just going to keep the straight line up. I want other position to be stronger, so we've removed a 2-2, so now we make the trading awkward. So they'd have to trade out with the fighter, which we really want them to do. So it makes our next turn stronger, as we will hopefully see. Of course, we've had to telegraph our turn. They kindly draw us a Dragon Slayer, which may become relevant later. And then they're firing off supply chain, swinging for the bleachers, which is very understandable. So, this is where we start doing maths. So the Panzer is the obvious play. We have to make this play. We need an operative unit on board. However, if we combined arms it, we get a decent operative unit. We did this. Now we just decide what we're destroying. Can't attack that unit. That unit has smoke screen, so we're going to go for face for right now. But that's okay, because it's a 4-4 going for face, and if they deploy a unit that we can get to, we'll take it out, gain a card and a credit. If they don't, so they're going to go for the big burst of fire play. Now, it's a tactic. It's solid, our opponent's doing their best, but we have Panzergren. So once again, we're just going to find the line, swing to the point, say, okay, at this point, you destroy us or we destroy you. This is our health total is irrelevant here. Our deck size is irrelevant here. This is just a race to zero. How fast can you burn your opponent down? The answer in the case of this deck is very. Opponent flings the ginger. It's a decent play, but then they know they're done. It's another good win. Another sign of this deck just accelerating at insane speed. It's just what this deck does. Okay, so another game. Back in for one more. This time we're back at US again, so frontline or ramp in all likelihood. Looking at our hand, we're not complaining about most of this. There's a Storer and Sudden Strike, questionable. Keeping both tanks is questionable because we're less likely to draw an infantry. I was hoping to pull up Combined Arms. I did, and something to trigger it in the ME, which I did. I would have liked to have seen an infantry. That is the main aim here, but that's okay. We've got some open pressure. So duress is the thing. Okay. We don't have any benefit from this. Do we combine arms it? I mean, we could. Nah. It's too early. We've got no benefit from it. Combined arms isn't getting us anything, and we're not in any rush. Our opponent's not doing anything. They might be on a ramp. And we're waiting to see them show their hand for that. Good draw. No, the 109G comes down here. We're just going to select this. It doesn't really matter. The main reason for the 109G here, though, is of course not the pincer effect. It is the fact that it gives us an extra 3 damage on board, but much more importantly, it gives us an extra buff when we drop Combined Arms. So next turn, hypothetically, we would do a number of things. Our opponent just looks at it and goes, I've lost. And this is, I kept this game for a specific reason. This will happen on this deck. Some opponents will read the board position and just be done. And that's okay. Whether it's accurate, whether it's the optimal play, I will always question, but I'm not here to question my opponent's logic. But you will see this. You will see quite a lot of this. Swing on. So, we're back. Swing on back, and so those are 3 games that illustrate what this deck does. So this deck is fascinating to me from a mathematical perspective, purely from the perspective of like the maths and the construction of this deck. The list, when you look at it down below, is incredibly lean and very focused. And it only cares about one thing, and it's a fascinating thing of looking at different illustrations of resource. This deck remembers that our HQ defense is a resource until we have 0 of it. Our cards are a resource until we have 0 of them. And we can use that as ways to accelerate. So we're accelerating via cards, obviously through accepting discard to get a 2/2 that has 0 operation cost. I can't emphasize enough how strong 34th is when you play it this way. 0 op cost 2/2 infantry is not nothing. It may feel like it may feel very small, but it's a big margin in this deck. It enables our 35Ts. It buffs our Combined Arms play. And it's a 2/2 with 0 op cost. And it cost us 1 credit. On top of that, of course, we have Nakshub, which can give us some really good credit acceleration, Auto Cannon, which can do damage when we deploy units, which we're going to do a lot of. But this is not also an elite heavy deck. The reason this is not an elite heavy deck, of course, is that we're discarding cards. We can't focus on expecting to see any one card in this deck. Rather, what we're focusing on is sheer momentum. This deck is... I have charitably described this deck in the most positive possible way as like driving a supercar. If you take your eye off the road, lose concentration, even for a second, you will just crash. It'll just rip completely out of control, and you're probably never getting it back under control. Because this thing is a finely tuned engine, and its only interest is in going fast. That makes this a fascinating deck. If you can play it, I recommend you do. I don't, however, recommend that you fire out and craft it. This is not an all-winning deck that is just going to put your game on easy mode so that you can climb. I can't emphasize that enough. I don't do many of these videos for that reason. But this one was fascinating to me on an intellectual level. The deck building behind this means that I have described this deck as brilliant or beautiful madness. It is a beautiful thing. It is finely tuned, incredibly hair trigger. It's so effective when it works, which is most of the time, in my experience, if you know what you're doing. But you need to watch your mulligan, consider your opponent, you need to focus turn after turn, and there will be turns when you take way longer to make a play than you would expect to in an aggressive deck like this. It doesn't play itself, because the lines matter, because you are on a clock. The minute you start playing this deck, you are on a countdown to losing, because you're going to be discarding your own cards. You're going to be deploying units that are easily removed. You're going to be face racing, which means you haven't got any really effective way of value trading. That's something you don't want to be doing. You are setting yourself up on a crash course, but you're doing it because you believe you can hold on long enough to cross the finish line before the problem arrives. It's bonkers. And I love it. It's so much fun if you're that kind of player. It's an adrenaline ride. Anyway, I'm not going to make a huge thing about this video, but it was good fun. If you want to, you can go and check out I think that my last Twitch stream is probably still available to watch on Twitch for the next 28 days or whatever. It might even make it over here, but this is a blast. Have some fun with it. And I just wanted to take the time to do this video for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I think it's great that this sort of thing filters down. It's fun, and I think it's great to share it. But also, I wanted some appreciation for what I consider to be one of the great arts of this game, which is incredibly good deck building. Knowing if you ever get around to see this video, and I don't know whether you will or not, I would love to talk to you about this deck. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, the building on it, and to climb into that mind of yours, because, man, it's incredible. This is as I say, this is beautiful madness in the best possible way. Alright, so I'm Bear Gardener. This has been another video. I'll be back with more content, but for now, take care, be good humans, and I will catch you next time.